Hello, welcome to Tom Talks. I'm re-recording this presentation due to some technical difficulties with the sound in the original broadcast.
Time for a field trip. Hello, welcome to Tom Talks. Welcome to Keystone Landing. My name is Tom Simpson. I'm the field station ecologist with the Conservation District. We're going to go on a canoe trip down Nippersink Creek today. We're going to start over here on the west side of the park, all the way here on Keystone Road. We're going to go about 6.7 miles through the park, all the way over to Pioneer Landing on the east side of the park. So we've got pretty good weather today, a little bit rain to start with, but it should hold out for us. Great water conditions, not too much water, not too little with Nippersink Creek. That's always important. So we're gonna have a good day today, and our theme for the day will be the changing stream. And I say that because the stream has we're going to see evidence for a lot of changes that have happened over the last 18,000 years, starting with glaciation and the events right after glaciation, over 10 or 12,000 years that a stream flowed through a prairie valley, and we'll see a little bit of evidence of that stream today, and then we'll look at all the changes that have happened since European settlement, changes that farmers and settlers made to the stream, and finally the changes the Conservation District has made over the last few years. So we'll have a busy day today. Should take us 4 or 5 hours. We'll have a good time, and so it's time to get in the boats. Let's go. We wanted to stop here to talk a little bit about the geologic history of the Nippersink Valley. If you tuned into our geology Tom Talks some weeks ago, we got a little version of that. We're in the middle of what's called a glacial tunnel valley. So if you can see in the images you're seeing in the corner of the video now, you'll see what a tunnel valley is, and the water is flowing literally through a tunnel in the ice. Under high pressure, so and probably thousands to tens of thousands of times as much water as flows in the Nippersink Creek today. So the two streams bear almost no resemblance to one another. And those big gravel hills in the distance we call the kames, were gravel bars that formed along the edge of that tunnel valley, and then as the ice decayed, those became freestanding gravel hills along the edge of the valley. And what you can't see from this perspective are the fens that form along the base of that valley, all the way from where Lost Valley Visitor Center is, which is in the direction I'm pointing, all the way to the base of the big kames right here. You find these places where the groundwater is oozing to the surface. The water goes into that gravelly paramaterial, it goes down, hits the permanent water table, and it moves laterally and comes out along the base of the slope. And we get these spring fens. They're really common in this part of the county because of the geology here, the abundance of these kettle kame landforms, that permeable material that allows the water to move through it so easily. So, and Nippersink actually is an Algonquin Indian word that means small waters. And small waters really refers to the spring-fed nature of Nippersink Creek, at least in the past. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start to go down the stream a little bit further, and we're going to start to see some other parts of the history of the stream. Some parts of the history have to do more with people in recent times. Let's take a look at a few of the plants that are growing along the creek. This is one that doesn't look very spectacular now, but this is the blue flag iris. This will be just beautiful when the flowers come out. Big, beautiful blue and light blue, white mixtures in there. This is the aptly named Sandbar Willow growing here on a sandbar next to Nippersink Creek. It grows in lots of other places and can sometimes be a bit of a pest because it grows so vigorously and clones itself and creates thickets. But here, this is exactly where it fits, right on a sandbar next to a creek. We've got a couple of plants in the water here that are easy to miss. This is the leafy pondweed here. Now, it's a little hard to appreciate this, but this one has fairly narrow leaves. It's Potamogeton foliosus, long, narrow leaves. And this is the long-leaved pondweed over here that has leaves that remind me, being more of a terrestrial botanist, more like the leaves of Solomon seal. This is a monocot like Solomon seal, so there's a reason for that similarity. They don't look very similar. They're both in the same genus, Potamogeton. This is Potamogeton nodosus. This is more of our Sandbar Willow. And here is, I'm not going to be able to go to species on this, but this is one of our spike rushes in the genus Ecologist that grow along areas of exposed mud. This is the whole plant here, folks. There's nothing more to it. There are no leaves. The stem is green. That conducts photosynthesis. There's a little spikelet at the end that has tiny, tiny little flowers, and then we'll have tiny, tiny little nutlets. And each nutlet has a little cap on top that you help use to identify the spike rush with. Because these are reddish at the base, I suspect it's the red-rooted spike rush, but without getting a magnifying glass out, I couldn't be certain. Oh, and one more while we're standing here. This is the swamp milkweed. Just coming into bloom now. A somewhat smaller blooming head than the common milkweed that we know so well along roadsides. And this one has somewhat narrower leaves. It has the milky sap. It serves as a host plant for the monarch larvae, just as the common milkweed does. Now let's look at a few more plants here along Nippersink Creek. This one's pretty spectacular at this time of year. This is the climbing rose, one of our native roses, Rosa satigera. Unusual in that it has only 3 leaflets. Most roses have 5, 7, 9 leaflets. This one has only 3 for each leaf. So beautiful native rose, peak of flowering. Right now, the big tall plant behind me is cup plant, one that we used a lot in the restoration efforts along Nippersink Creek, and you can see it grows abundantly. And the reason it's called cup plant is a well demonstrated name because the leaves come together in the center and they form a cup. And those cups are full of water. Even the dew in the early morning will fill those cups with water. So if you do a lot of field work, as I do, and you're out walking through cup plants in the early morning, you come out the other side and you're completely drenched because as you brush past them, they dump the water on top. This is closely related to the prairie dock and compass plant. Another nice wetland plant we've got here is the spotted Joe pieweed. Right here, many or 3 or 5 leaflets and a node along the stem. Characteristic plant of nice wetlands in our area. What else do we have here? Here is another characteristic wetland plant, common, but it's important to recognize these common plants. This is the dark green bulrush, a really characteristic plant of stream sides. Anytime you're near water and wetlands, you get this dark green bulrush. It's in the sedge family. Well, that's all for now. We're going to see lots more plants on our way down the Nippersink today. In the 1950s, farmers straightened out a lot of the meander bends along this part of the Nippersink Creek. What you're looking at directly behind me is the old ditch that they created. You'll see well, I'll have an image here in the corner of the video that shows you what the stream looked like after they had ditched it in the 1950s. It wasn't completely without bends, but they had cut off most of the meanders. And that's really done, and we'll see a more extreme version of that here in a few minutes. That's done to speed the water movement. Farmers like to get the water out of the area quickly in the springtime to get the water table down. They can get their equipment out into the field. They can get the corn planted. The roots of the corn start to grow deeper if the water tables are lower. So there's lots of reasons why farmers wanted to get what they thought of as excess water, wanted to get it off of the landscape and get it off quickly. So that's why we do the ditching and tiling in the fields. And you straighten the streams in order for the water to flow through them faster. So Jackie's going to pan over and show you what is now, what was originally the course of Nippersink Creek, that was then cut off by the ditch behind me, and we have now reconnected. I think this was in 2001 or 2002 when this project was done. At the time it was called Phase 2 of the Nippersink project. So one more bit of evidence about how Nippersink Creek has changed over time. If you take a canoe trip down the creek today, you might think it's just always been this way, but it's gone through a huge number of changes. The tiny island behind me was created by the crews when we put the meanders back in this part of Nippersink Creek. And you can see the island, you can see it eroding in the inset images. We'll show you how over time it's getting smaller and smaller and will eventually disappear. Well, look what I found here. Looks like some fishermen, unfortunate fishermen, just lost a bait. I don't know. I haven't bought these in a long time, but it's several dollars worth. I'm going to slip it back here in the back of the canoe. The reason I stopped here really was to look at the erosion along this bank, and you can see that this is how erosion happens. The water is eating away at the base of the bank. It collapses and it leaves this ledge of sod coming out that is sagging down and will eventually break off and go into the stream. These are things that are really hard to control along a stream. These streams flow so much water in a modern landscape that they can be quite erosive. And here along these cut banks, you can see the erosion. If Jackie pans to the other side, you can see the flip side of that stream process. You see the deposition of that beautiful sandbar there. So both of those things go hand in hand. The sand that's removed from this bank here, the silts will wash down. Unfortunately, silts and clays will wash down and end up in the chain of lakes. The sands will be along the bottom of the stream and will move into these sandbars along the stream. So just something to think about as you go down Nippersink Creek on your next canoe trip. So we've just gone under the bridge at Valley Road in Glacial Park. If you look at the stream behind me, it looks almost like a lake. It's wide, it's fairly deep, probably chest deep here, moving very slowly. quite different from the stream where we first entered at Keystone Landing. And if you look at the inside image of the profile of this stream, really about 20 years ago with the original Nippersink projects, and you can see how the gradient on the stream is much steeper in that first half a mile, and then it flattens out. And we're in that flatter part here. And we're under the influence here of a big riffle. And the riffle is a rock dam that we installed in 2005. And we'll get to see that here in just a few minutes. But what that does is it deepens and widens the stream at this point. So the Nippersink Creek looks, you can almost give it a river label here. It looks rather large and impressive. The other reason I stopped here is because this is the start of what was the phase 1 project of Nippersink Creek de-channelization, channelizing being what was done to this stream in the middle 1950s. Now in this where we just went through, in that area they simply cut off a few of the meander bends to straighten the stream. Here they went whole hog and completely relocated the stream to the edge of the field in a line that went due north in the direction, roughly the direction, a little bit to the right of the directions Jackie's camera is facing right now. It went string straight, turned at 45 degrees north, and then turned 45 degrees and went due east to join the former meandering channel at the north end of this valley. So between this bridge we're under right now, and the next bridge we go through, we're in the phase 1 section of Nippersink Creek, which was our first attempt, and one of the first attempts in the country at de-channelization at this scale. So it was a place where we had a lot of successes, a few things maybe that weren't as successful as we wanted, but it's a wonderful example of ecological restoration, which you learn by doing. So get ready. Let's go. Just wanted to show you this really large sandbar developed along the edge of the stream, already colonized by, it looks like smartweed. We've got some Sandbar Willow on top, the slender nettle, the taller spindly plant over to the edge, a little lamb's quarter. Just plants that quickly colonize these sands once they're deposited. The reason I wanted to stop here, this is, looks like just another bend in the stream. This is a part of the early project of surveying along the Nippersink after the de-channelization. I remember very well, just because of the magnitude of the changes that happened here. The diagram shows you how small the channel was when it was first dug by the crews back in 2000, and then how rapidly, even over those first 4 years, the stream got I think it was over 6 feet deeper. It was over my head. Before that, it was like knee-deep water, and it was over my head in 4 years. I haven't done this since. When you do water that's over your head, it becomes very, very slow and hard to do. But so this is just an example of the stark changes. You'll also see in the inside images how the stream has gotten wider. That's a theme that you'll see over and over when you're looking at change in time at Nippersink Creek. After the de-channelization, the stream has widened itself out. Part of that here is the riffle and the raising of water levels, but part of it is just the stream moving the banks back, in some cases on both sides. Here it's really on both sides of the stream. Even here on the inside of the stream, you see the bank is cut here. The water just wanted more room to work here. So fascinating stuff. It was a project that I followed intensely for about 5 years, and I've only intermittently looked at it since then. But it's when you start looking at the stream below water, you see all sorts of wonderful things. The one I wanted to show you here is that kame behind me. Now, something that big you'd think would have to be a natural feature, and it is. But that kame was almost completely mined to the ground back in the 1950s when the farmers took the original meandering channel of Nippersink Creek and dug that ditch. They had to fill the original channel, and so they dug away that big gravel hill and used the gravel to fill the channel. So that kame almost completely disappeared. It came immediately to the north, was completely mined away. So when our crews were doing the phase 1 project of the Nippersink meandering, what they did was when they dug out the old gravels that had been used to fill the channel, they rebuilt the kames again. And so we've rebuilt both features as best we can to their original profile. So they're partly natural features and partly man-made features, but they're in exactly the same place as the original kames were. Really, again, kames that were formed along the edges as a part of those glacial tunnel valleys 18,000 years ago. Nippersink Creek has changed a lot over the last couple of hundred years, and one of the reasons it's changed is because the watershed has changed. So watersheds that 250 years ago, when rain fell, it stayed on the land. It moved very, very slowly to the nearest wetland and then probably evaporated there, or maybe moved very, very slowly to the nearest small stream, which then moved slowly to the next small stream, and so on and so on. And so raindrops that hit the ground might take many days or weeks to reach Nippersink Creek. That's not the case anymore. And when water falls on the ground in most of McHenry County today, it very rapidly finds its way into a drainage tile, or into a gutter in a parking lot, into a storm sewer, and from there into the nearest stream, and from there into the Nippersink Creek. So literally within hours of a rainfall, the stream level goes up, and the stream is flowing far more water than it did in the past in a watershed that released its water very, very slowly. One of the consequences of that extreme change in hydrology and a huge increase in volume of water that moves down the channel is that the channel entrenched. I mean, it literally cut downward into the earth, and that became a real interest of mine in the early 2000s, just after the first phase of the Nippersink project, and trying to understand what the original streams were like. And we'll stop and we'll take a look at one of those original stream channels here in a few minutes. But the question is, if the stream has entrenched, then how can we address that? And so one of the ways we addressed it was to build this riffle. And what the intent of this riffle was to raise the stream level again. Here there is another riffle immediately downstream of that. These are big guys. Together they raise the stream level 2 feet, which is one of the reasons why this stream has seemed so lake-like over the last few minutes of our paddling, because the water is ponded up behind those 2 big riffles. And we're hoping eventually the stream bed will build up in that calm area and come back somewhere close to its original level. But we'll talk more about the entrenchment here in a few minutes when we're closer where I did that original study. But I wanted you to know why these riffles were constructed. They weren't there just to be a challenge to kayakers and canoeists. They were there for an ecological reason. I stopped here was again to talk about changes in the stream. Where I am along the bank right here, there used to be an island right out there. Little island that was constructed with the phase 1 remeandering in Nippersink, and you can see that the remnants of that in this 2005 aerial photograph, and then the later photographs show how it disappeared. And again, in the cross-section diagrams, you can see how it gets smaller and smaller and then completely disappears. So one of the fascinating things about studying streams is that they're always moving and changing, and you have a plan. You think you know what it's going to do, but then the stream makes up its mind for itself, and you can be right 5 times out of 6. But the 6th time, the stream will do something very, very different from what you had anticipated. But what I didn't expect when I stopped here is listening to the birds. There was a common yellowthroat just up the bank on my left. There was a sedge wren just over to my right. Behind the sedge wren was a song sparrow. Yeah, it's just beautiful to be out here in the early morning. Since it was raining, we don't have a lot of competition, not a lot of canoeists and kayakers on the water, so it's just a wonderful morning to be out here. What you see on either side of me here are sandbars, quite large ones in fact. In fact, when you look at the series of aerial photographs you're seeing in the inset images, you'll see how this sandbar has grown over time. In fact, this is very much a separate sandbar with a high water channel that cut across on the inside of the sandbar, and then the whole thing is just built up over time, and it's really become a part of the mainland now. So that's one reason why I stopped here. Again, just showing how dynamic the stream channel and the features along the stream channel are. The other reason I stopped is because that little avenue, that little watery avenue, is a beaver drain. And beaver are cutting. It looks like they're mostly cutting willows here and dragging them down. It looks like there may be a part of the structure over on the other side of the stream. But you can see, if you look closely, you can see how the ends of the stems are cut off by beaver teeth. And if you look closely along the Nippersink, you'll see numerous beaver drags are not that uncommon, particularly where there are thickets of woody plants near the stream that the beaver are looking for. They'll cut them and then they'll create a drag that makes it easier as they keep dragging sticks toward the water. It gets easier and easier and easier to drag the next stick. So we're going to talk again about beaver here with our next stop, more about how huge their influence was in the pre-European settlement landscape. So that's just coming up. We just talked about beaver along the stream. We saw beaver drags. We saw the evidence of beaver chewing on sticks. But beaver also do something else. They build burrows in the bank. So we're all familiar with beaver lodges made of sticks, but beaver can also burrow into the bank. This is a great example of a tunnel that beaver have dug into the banks of Nippersink Creek. Now, when those were originally, before this bank eroded back, that entrance would have been fully below water, and that prevents. That's really a protection for the beaver for predators like in the past would have been wolves or later coyotes could have gotten in there. But now, since the bank has been eroded back, it's partially exposed at the water line. But those are beaver tunnels. Beaver actually live in colonies and burrows in the bank. And sometimes when you walk along Nippersink Creek, your foot will break through into a beaver tunnel. So it's a bit of a surprise. This funny little channel I'm in right now is the old ditch. The old ditch that used to be Nippersink Creek until it was de-channelized in around the year 2000. So in the 1950s, this ditch was dug, and this ditch right here is running due east and west, and then it turned southwest, and then it turned due south to go right back to the Iron Bridge, where I told you we were starting our phase 1 of the Nippersink de-channelization project. So this is remnants of the old ditch, and it was left intact because for a while we still had our canoe campground back here along the sides of the ditch, because that was formerly along the sides of what was then Nippersink Creek. Jackie's going to pan around now and show you the present channel, where it's actually leaving Conservation District territory for just a little while, and it comes back in a few hundred yards downstream. stopped here is dramatically different vegetation along the sides of the stream. We've just entered an area of the stream that actually goes just outside of the Glacial Park. So this is what streams in the Midwest look like in lieu of any ecological restoration activity. They get completely filled in with trees. They're a mixture of native and exotic trees in there, buckthorn and honeysuckle, but lots of silver maple, probably formerly a lot of green ash in here. But for 12,000 years, Native Americans were regularly burning this landscape, and so this whole huge flat valley was just a vast prairie. A little hard to visualize right here. This is what happens when you stop burning. So what we're going to do now is we're going to keep going, and getting a little bit too close here. We're going to keep going downstream, and we're going to stop for lunch here. I know you're getting hungry, so we're going to stop for lunch here in just a minute, and we'll look at some more interesting features of how the stream has changed in the last few centuries. You'll notice another striking change in the vegetation along Nippersink Creek. We left that area of dense trees and brush, and now we're out in this last phase of the story of the restoration of Nippersink Creek. This is a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers project. It was just completed about a year or two ago. And you can see the dramatically different vegetation, how the banks are very gradual along the edges. We'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. Let's stop for lunch now.